Elijah and the Prophets of Baal. A soothing bedtime story. Close your eyes and let your breath slow down. Imagine the ancient land of Israel, golden and sun-warmed, where the hills roll gently toward the sea and the wind carries the scent of wild herbs and dry earth. Long, long ago, in a time of kings and miracles, there lived a prophet named Elijah. Elijah was a solitary man, rugged and weathered like the wilderness that had Elijah and the prophets of Baal. A soothing bedtime story. Close your eyes and let your breath grow slow and easy. Imagine the ancient land of Israel, golden hills rolling gently toward the sea, the air warm and dry, carrying the faint scent of wild thyme and sun-baked earth. Long, long ago, in a time of kings and miracles, there lived a prophet named Elijah. Elijah was a solitary man, weathered and strong, shaped by years in the open wilderness. He wore a rough garment of camel's hair and walked the dusty roads of Israel with quiet certainty. He did not seek comfort or royal favor. He sought only the voice of his God, the Lord, the God of Israel, and that voice was enough to fill his life with purpose. But Israel had drifted far from that God. King Ahab sat on the throne in those days, a weak and easily swayed king who had married a fierce Phoenician princess named Jezebel. She brought with her the worship of a foreign god called Baal, served by hundreds of shouting, dancing prophets. Under her influence, altars to Baal had spread across Israel like shadows over a quiet field, and the people had grown confused, forgetting the God of their ancestors. It was into this confusion that Elijah stepped. He came before King Ahab one day and delivered words that fell like a stone into still water. "As the Lord God of Israel lives," he said, his voice low and steady, "there shall be no rain, not dew, not a drop, until I say so." And with that he was gone. The drought that followed was long and merciless. 3 slow years crept by. Rivers shrank to trickles. Fields turned pale as ash. Wells ran dry. Animals grew thin and the people grew thin with them. Even the king could feel that something was terribly, deeply wrong, something no army or treasury could fix. And through it all, God kept Elijah tucked safely away. First beside a quiet brook called Cherith, where ravens arrived each morning and evening carrying bread and meat, and where Elijah drank from the cool, murmuring stream. When even that brook dried up, God sent him to a small town called Zarephath. There, a gentle widow shared her last handful of flour and her last drop of oil, and found, miraculously, that her jar never emptied and her jug never ran dry. In that small, quiet home, Elijah rested, waited, and listened. In the 3rd year, the word of the Lord came again, "Go. Present yourself to Ahab. I am ready to send rain." So Elijah walked out of hiding and back into the world. When Ahab saw him, the king's words came sharp and fast. "Is that you, you troubler of Israel?" Elijah did not flinch. "I have not troubled Israel," he replied calmly. "You have, because you have abandoned the Lord and followed the Baals." Then he gave the king a command. "Gather all of Israel at Mount Carmel. Bring every prophet of Baal, all 450 of them. It is time to settle this once and for all." Mount Carmel rose above the valley like a broad green shoulder overlooking the shimmering sea. Thousands of Israelites filled the hillside that day. The prophets of Baal arrived, robed and ready, and Elijah stood alone before them all. He looked out over the great crowd and let the silence hold. Then he spoke. "How long will you waver between 2 opinions? If the Lord is God, follow him. If Baal is God, follow him." No one answered. So Elijah laid out a test, simple and clean the way true things always are. 2 bulls, 2 altars, no fire lit by human hands. Each side would call on their God, and whichever God answered with fire from heaven, that was the true God. People agreed. The prophets of Baal went first. They prayed, they cried out, they danced a lurching and desperate dance around the altar as the morning hours slipped away. At noon, Elijah offered a dry observation. "Perhaps he is busy," he said quietly. "Perhaps he is sleeping." The prophets cried louder, raved and wept through the long blazing afternoon. But there was no answer, no voice, no fire. The altar stayed cold and still, and the wind moved quietly through the grass. When the golden hour of the evening sacrifice arrived, Elijah stepped forward. Slowly and carefully, he rebuilt the ancient altar of the Lord that had fallen to ruin. He chose 12 stones, one for each tribe of Israel, and set them together one by one until the altar stood whole again. He dug a trench around it, arranged the wood, and laid the offering in place. Then he said something that made the crowd murmur with disbelief. "Fill 4 large jars with water and pour them over the offering and the wood." They did. "Do it again." They did. "Do it a 3rd time." A 3rd great pouring of water cascaded down, soaking the wood, filling the trench until it overflowed. No fire could survive this. Everyone understood that was precisely the point. Then Elijah stepped to the altar and bowed his head. His prayer was quiet, not a shout, not a performance, but a calm and direct conversation with the God he had known his whole life. "Lord God of Abraham, Isaac, and Israel, let it be known today that you are God in Israel, and that I am your servant. Hear me, O Lord, so that these people may know that you are God, and that you are turning their hearts back to you." That was all. The fire fell. It came from the sky, sudden and total, and consumed everything. The offering, the wood, the stones themselves, even the water in the trench vanished in an instant as if it had never been there at all. The crowd fell to the ground as one. "The Lord, He is God," they cried, their voices breaking open with something that had been locked away for a very long time. "The Lord, He is God." When the weighty work of that day was finally done, Elijah climbed to the very top of Carmel and sat down quietly. He sent his servant to look out toward the western sea. 6 times the servant returned with nothing to report. But the 7th time he came back with something small and wonderful. "A cloud," he said, "no bigger than a man's hand, rising from the sea." "Go," said Elijah softly. "Tell Ahab to head down before the rain traps him." And the sky slowly darkened. The wind came alive. Then, after 3 long, dry, faithless years, the rain came. Gently at first, a few cool drops on warm earth. And more. Then a steady, soaking, generous rain washing over the hills and running down into the valleys, filling the dry places, waking the sleeping seeds, reminding the whole thirsty land what it felt like to be cared for. Elijah ran through the rain, strengthened beyond his years, all the way down the mountain ahead of Ahab's chariot, as the storm rolled in and the people of Israel began, at last, to remember who they were. The drought was over. The question had been answered. And the land breathed in the water and was still. "Rest now. Let your breath slow like rain settling into quiet ground. You are held. You are known. And all shall be well."